Hello and welcome. My name is Julie Grimm. I'm the host of Love, Dating, and Relationships for Spiritual Women, and I'm a healer and guide in the Modern Mystery School. Today, I'm really excited. I have Justine Harrington with me here, and she is a business and mindset coach. So welcome, Justine.
Thank you for having me on, Julie. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, me too. So I know you have a lot to share on this topic, and I'm curious, what are your top insights on relationships from your own spiritual journey?
Yeah, so I think in my journey, I found that relationships are the best playground for knowing thyself and really like understanding who you are and how you show up in the world and like what's going on in your inner world. And so in my experience from having all different types of relationships, from like romantic relationships to professional relationships, friendships, any kind of relationships, the person that you meet at the grocery store, like everybody is reflecting something to you about who you are. And if you can look at other people in that lens, it's going to really help you to understand yourself more deeply and come into like a greater sense of like where you're going and what you want out of life, if by knowing yourself more deeply.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in the Empower Thyself class, we actually say part of what your homework or your new job is to begin to see yourself through the reflection of others, which is kind of what you
Right.
were doing. But can you
Mhm.
give like an example or a high level tidbit about what that would actually look like for somebody who might have never experienced that before?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the ways that you can find areas of like potential for growth within yourself or by looking at any relationships where you have any kind of like discomfort or trigger. Trigger is kind of like a popular word that's used right now. And basically what that means is like anywhere within yourself where you feel a bit of like discomfort or like an opposition to your belief system or the way that you think or the way that you feel about something. And so in my experience, like it's it's interesting. Like I really like I actually love the process of like going deep within my psyche and like working on areas within me that like cause discomfort. Like I think sometimes I'm like a sadist in that way. Like I really enjoy the process of like, okay, there's this person that I've met in my life. They're causing this discomfort within me, like they're challenging a way that I see things or a way that I like feel about something. There's something there. And so in my practice, I've like taken more note of this consciously, and I've used these as catalysts for growth to be able to like look within myself to see, okay, there's something that I'm not seeing about myself within this relationship. So let's dive deeper and figure out what that is. And what I've found is in this process, by going through the process to actually look within myself at that discomfort, it actually creates more harmony in the relationship that I'm having with somebody who I'm having discomfort with. And so meeting others and like understanding others is a process by which you can really come into more harmony in your life and actually like more peace within your life, because like there's less opportunity to trigger you and to make you feel that discomfort. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or even push away, because I know a lot of
Right.
people, maybe not like you, who might prefer to avoid things that are uncomfortable or avoid
Right.
relationships that are overly triggering, or again, bring up what you were talking about, that shadow that we really don't want to look at. I know one big way that I've definitely avoided, and I know most people avoid, is actually by like projecting onto the other person, which is exactly the opposite of what you're saying. So we come into an uncomfortable situation with somebody, but rather than say, oh, what in me is at cause, we just put all of the power on the other person, that it's their
Yeah.
fault. We blame them and maybe name call or put them down, whether, probably not to their face, more just in our own mind, to
Yeah, totally.
excuse or rationalize why we shouldn't interact with them more. So what you're saying is like hugely powerful in terms of having the ability to not necessarily shapeshift, because it's not like you're accommodating somebody differently. It's just coming into a greater self-understanding of why you might feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned the word shapeshift because I feel like it's something I'm still working on, but like an unhealed version of me, I think created these coping mechanisms where this has always been, I guess, maybe like a gift I've had of like being able to intuit others and being able to like understand their perspective on where they're coming from and that sort of thing. And an unhealed version of me does do that sort of shape shifting thing of like, I'm going to play this character to like accommodate to this other person and like create that harmony in the relationship. And that's a strategy. It's definitely a strategy that can create that harmony, but like then it's like I'm creating disharmony within myself by doing that.
Right. So it's
Right.
not authentic. Like that's what I always think
Right.
of, we say
Totally.
we'll keep the peace, but if keeping the peace
Right.
means that you're not in a state of peace, the peace has not been kept.
Yeah. So it's a balance between the two. It's like, and but I think like really the key here is like detachment. It's like I'm not going to actually attach to what the outcome is going to be of this relationship. But what I will do is like take accountability for myself and just have awareness of what's happening and like where they are in the relationship and where I am, and just not really having an attachment. And like by having that detachment from the like where the relationship is going, you can create more peace within yourself and like also have a peaceful relationship with the other person.
Yeah. No, and I love the word harmony because harmony,
Mm.
peace, you can sometimes feel like there can be tyrannical peace. There can
Sure.
be there can be peace from everybody just following orders blindly. But that's not actually harmony. Like I think I like to paint, so I think of harmony as like many different colors on a palette working together harmoniously, but the other color, like if the green became blue, then the whole color of the painting would be blue. I guess you
Right.
could call it harmonious, but it would lack that vibrancy. So to have harmony
Right.
and to have the rainbow of colors, each color needs to keep its hue, its saturation. The pink can't become orange or purple or blue or whatever. It has to stay pink. But then again, does it have to be in conflict with everything around it? So I like that word harmony because I think it does go a
Yeah,
little
I like that.
beyond peace. Yeah. Where
I
we
love that.
yeah, we maintain our essence. We don't compromise ourselves, but at the same time, we're not avoiding discomfort. We're not avoiding people, or even worse, projecting and believing our negative projections based on whatever triggers or assumptions we have about them.
Yeah. And I love actually love the like, I love the analogy of using like principles of art to like define relationships and define like to create harmony out of disharmony in relationships and people. Like, there's color and there's hue and there's contrast and there's rhythm. And like you can create patterns on a canvas and maybe the colors are even disharmonious, but if like there's a pattern that works, like you can create a masterpiece. And like, yeah, relationships are like, it's like the art of like creating the masterpiece within. And like by doing that work within, we're also helping to create harmony with the others. Harmony, that's not a word. Harmony with others. And it's like, yeah, it's this ongoing work to create more beauty, right? And create more harmony.
Yeah, I've been taking a color painting class, and then I was recently certified as a color analyst for personal color, like literally what colors make you light up. And I learned so much actually about relationships through learning about color, because color, I think, is a wonderful metaphor for relationships and for that
Mm,
specifically relationship harmony, what we're talking about. Because when we mix, if we were to take all the colors in the rainbow and mix them together, do you know what color we get?
black, right?
Black or brown, typically brown,
Brown. Yeah.
dark, muddy brown. So
Yeah.
we need to maintain our individuality while at the same time respecting
Yeah.
somebody else's individuality. And it's not easy. It's
Yeah,
very
it's true.
challenging in relationships. Yeah, because if I'm pink and you're blue, it's really easy for me to go, well, blue sucks. Pink's
Right.
clearly the best one here. I don't know why blue would ever choose that temperature, like whatever blue.
Totally.
Or take it personal. Like, why doesn't blue want to be pink? Doesn't it like pink?
Oh.
Does it see how good pink is?
Yeah, they look really good next to each other. So I don't know, maybe they should try it out. Right?
I guess that's the Barbie Ken, right? The blue pink
Yeah, right.
colors. But yeah, so it's very fascinating stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know you've talked a lot also in your spiritual journey, but then also as you start to uncover and learn more about relationships, about manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit more about what you've learned about manifestation through your spiritual journey and through relationships.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love manifestation. This is my favorite topic. I mean, I'm a business coach and I'm like growing businesses every day and helping people to like go from A to Z, and there's a process that like you go through in order to grow in any aspect. Um, and that process is an alchemical process where you have to go through in order to grow and to exceed kind of the boundaries of where you're at now. There has to be a process where you kind of go out of your comfort zone a little bit and you work through, and it's just like what we talked about before with like even like relationship alchemy of like it kind of going outside of the bounds of where you're comfortable and exploring those places in order to come to a higher level of growth. I see this process being like directly correlated with manifestation. And so really like we can only have agency over ourselves, right? Like we can't really control what another person's going to do. If you're looking to manifest like your life partner, for example, like I can't control if my life partner is ready for me, right? But what I can control is like, where do I show up and how am I showing up in terms of like where I'm aligning my thoughts and my emotions and the actions that I'm taking in order to get to that desired outcome. And so in my own process of even like, I think romantic relationships is usually where people look. It could also be professional or like even like expanding your social circle. Like there's all these different types of relationships where we have manifestation goals. Where I've started to, I think, find some process in creating manifestation in relationships is like really looking at transmuting my inner triggers and looking at where like my thought forms are creating negativity in my relationships, and like where can I take those thought forms and reorient them towards more positive outcomes. So if somebody's dealing with something like low self-esteem, like the way you're going to show up in relationships is you're going to create that in the relationship, and you're going to make choices from a foundation of low self-esteem. And so where that's going to probably like some of the fruit that might come from that, or maybe like you have a higher tolerance for like abusive relationships, and so that doesn't work, right? It's like an obvious example, but like so where you can show up in creating more harmony in your life and what you're manifesting is by working on some of those self-esteem issues, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I see manifestation as like a process of like creating harmony within yourself to like to drive towards your outcomes that you're looking for.
And what I'm hearing too, so manifestation for you is a bit, yeah, it's an interesting take on it that I haven't really heard said in that way, but I love that
Hmm.
frame. It's about remodeling the thought patterns that you find in part,
Mhm. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
seeing your current manifestations as actually like a reflection or maybe even like a validation system of the thought patterns that you've been operating from up till this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like how I'm going to show up is going to reflect in the relationship. And so it's like both not taking it personally when a relationship doesn't work out, but then also like taking responsibility for how I'm showing up. And so part of that is like taking responsibility for my growth and my healing.
Right. And if you don't like the relationship that you've created and cultivated, doing some
Mhm.
inner work to discover, well, how did I come to create this? Because,
Yeah, absolutely.
and how do you, if you discover, like, for example, the low self-esteem, how would you start working with that? Just for people who are listening who might relate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of like having a better sense of inner boundaries. Like where do I start and where does the other person stop? Like where do I start and stop in comparison to the other person. And that's, I think, like the kind of the crux of like mastering relationships, is having a really good sense of self. And so I'll explain, I'll use myself as the example. Like, this is something that I've really struggled with. It's like, and I mentioned earlier, like I have always been really good at like adjusting myself to the room and being able to read a room and being able to like adjust who I am in the room to create that harmony. But like, really what I was doing when I was doing that was, okay, cool, like I'm showing up in a more comfortable way for others, and that's good in some ways, right? But also, like, I wasn't really showing up authentically, and I wasn't really showing people who I am. And so part of my journey of self-discovery, and I've noticed this show in my relationships even, is like having a greater sense of who I am and what my needs are and what I care about, what my values are. And like, the more and more I connect with that, and the more and more I do healing around loving those parts of myself, what I've noticed reflected to me in my relationships are like more depth of intimacy, more depth of like joy, more depth of love. And like, I've noticed my friendships get stronger. I've noticed my professional relationships are much more long lasting and more fruitful. Like, my clients get better results because like I'm showing up more. And even in romantic relationships, I've seen over time the quality of my romantic relationships have gotten better and better and better because like I'm more devoted to myself. And so like that's creating like a stronger foundation for better relationships. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. I'm curious about your astrological chart because
Mm.
I have quite a lot of Gemini in my chart, and I did an astrology
Mm.
reading with Alex Che, who's a
Yeah.
master astrologer in the Modern Mystery School, and I vividly remember she painted this metaphor for me that was so on point. She's like,
Yeah.
you are very good at accommodating the room temperature.
Mhm.
And so you'll put it to 75 if that's what the room wants. But sometimes with the room, what's best for everybody actually is that they accommodate to your temperature and you set the
Yeah.
room, and it's actually better for everybody if they accommodate to you. So it's 100% what you're talking about, that it's a skill and it's amazing talent. And yet it involves a lot of assumptions. I've actually found for me, like when I
Mhm.
pattern, it's like the amount of assumptions I'm making about what's good. Because,
Yeah.
okay, what's good is catering to all these people. Why? Why isn't what's good catering to me? Why isn't it what's good
Sure.
having them cater to me occasionally? And as we step
Yeah.
into more of our inner authority and we really come to know ourselves, we can hold that not from a place of ego or narcissism, but from the exact opposite space. Like,
Totally.
I'm going to have you cater to me because it's good for us all.
Yeah, and it's a balance, right? Like, it's like being overly accommodating is one side of the pendulum, and then like being like overly combative it'd be like maybe the other side of the pendulum. And so you don't want to be either of those things because neither of those are actually authentic. Like, if I'm overly combative, like I'm acting from my triggers and I'm acting from my emotions, and I actually don't have any mastery over myself. Like, I'm just totally like spewing my stuff all over everybody. And so like, by doing inner work and by doing like, things like therapy or healing or any of the things that people do in order to get their mind clear and more like in alignment with like something that's higher, um, um, the more I'm going to be able to be in that middle pillar and to be able to show up who I am and still create that harmony and grace everywhere I go, because inside that's how I feel. And so like I really do feel like, I mean, there's that prayer that we say we both study in the same school, and one of the prayers that we have is, they say, in relationships is how we understand eternity. There's a prayer that we have that says that. And I've thought a lot about that phrase, like, what does that mean? Like, in relationships, we understand eternity. What does that mean? And it's like, the more we can get to know ourselves, the more we're going to be able to actually really understand the wholeness of who we are, and the wholeness of who we are is reflected in others. And so you mentioned like astrology earlier. Um, that's one way to like think about it. Like we have, let's say there's like the 7 main planets. If we just focus on those, there's 12 different combinations that somebody could have in each of those planets. And so everyone has like a different operating system, right? Like that's kind of like a good way to think about it. Like we're computers, like, and we have different pieces of code that make up how our mind works and how our heart works. How do we show up in love? How do we show up in like how we take action on things? And astrology kind of maps to those pieces of our personality and who we are and our energy. And like, so when I meet another person, they have a different code base than I have. And so when we put those two code bases together, we can understand like the intricacies of how they interact with each other, and we can better understand who we are in the wholeness of like of of
Yeah.
of all of the energies and like how they harmonize together. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, eternity and oneness, because ultimately we are
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
So we're individual and we are like pink, blue, we're all the different colors we each are. And
Mm.
we are all at the same time one with one another. So I think that gets to the heart of it too. It's interesting though, when I was kind of giving that example about accommodating to one person, I think it can be, especially like as you move into a role of like a leader or a boss, or neither of us have children, but when and if we have children, the children need to accommodate to the parent, right? Like that
Yeah, of course.
tone can be very powerful to give guidance, actually, right? There's like, if everybody is sort of in chaos or a stir, setting like a single container, a single vision quiets things instantly. They're like, okay, we're on this channel now. We're not on 85 different channels. We're harmonized, but in a different sense. So, yeah, it's just
Right.
interesting to think of all the different places where that shows up and applies. And then, of course, if you're on the receiving end, sometimes it's good to just mute, turn down the Barbie pink and come to a really pale pink. That's another
Yeah.
thing I learned about in my color class, that colors, as they get lighter and as they get darker, start to look like each other.
Mm.
They blend in a lot more.
Yeah.
Like light blue, pale blue, pale green, pale pink, they're going to start to, you're not going to be able to tell the difference anymore. Oh, was that a pale pink or a pale green? It's so light, I can't tell. And same thing as it gets really dark,
Yeah.
tell either. It's only in this peak saturation. So there's ways that we can turn up and down the volume knob on our own energy signatures to harmonize or not at the appropriate moment. Um,
Yeah.
but kind of going back to what you were saying about know thyself, if we don't even know what color we are, we don't even know what frame we're using in that moment or in any moment, it's going to be really hard to come into that next level of mastery. And probably our color, first of all, is like pretty mucky. I know mine definitely was when I first started on the journey to know thyself.
Me too.
There was a lot of pollution. It
Me
was
too.
not a pure color. Okay, let me tell you, we had, where did this ink stain come from? Why is there this, like a child spilled every other color inside of the dish, like whatever, right? So there's kind of a lot of cleanup on aisle 4 that we have to do, and that's that inner
Right.
that you're talking about. But yeah, but absolutely, we can use other people to go, oh, maybe I do have some muck over here because this keeps coming up, and I can't keep saying it's other people. I really have to take a look at why is it coming up for
Right.
me, really. Um, but there's also the possibility to see our goodness in other people too, and our
Mhm.
light, and what,
Right.
and our strengths and our gifts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
And maybe salute the other Barbie pink on the road
Right. Yeah.
when we.
Totally. Yeah, that's true. Because the more you know yourself and the more you know your own goodness, you'll be able to see it in others and like reflect that to others too, which is like an amazing service.
True. And we talk about soul tribe, find
Yeah.
soul tribe. Who are those soul tribe people that you have links with? And if you really don't know yourself, it's going to be very hard to identify who those people are and honor them if you do.
Mhm.
So, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
it's good stuff.
Any last tidbits? This has been such a good conversation. Who knew we were talking about so much about harmony
Harmony. Yeah, and beauty.
and
Create
beauty?
more harmony and beauty.
Because
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was doing some like preparation for the podcast, I like did some journaling. Um, and one of the things that I've been really reflecting on recently is like, and it is related to harmony within the self, is like the concept of like the broken heart. And so like one of the risks that we take when we enter into relationship with somebody, whether it's romantic or friendship or whatever, is there's a certain level of attachment that comes with that, right? And so the greater the attachment and the greater the like intimacy of that relationship, when the relationship breaks, it leaves this broken heart, right? And so a lot of people, I think, don't enter into the process of relationship because of that attachment and because of the pain that can come from the break. And so I think one of the things that I've been reflecting on is like, I mean, I think it's hard to get to the level of mastery where you don't have any attachment. I think that it's possible, but I think it's very difficult. And so maybe we can start looking at like one, looking at where the attachments are creating pain over and over and like coming into healing around that, but then also like looking at the pain in the act of like processing a broken heart with like some compassion and also like as an opportunity to grow and heal. Right. And so, like, where we have attachments is where our suffering can come from. And, like, we can look at those as opportunities for like greater growth and greater opportunity to create more peace in our heart and in our mind and how we show up. And so that was something that I was reflecting on as well. And I think it is related to harmony because the ability to which we can transmute that pain, the rate at which we can do it, like the stronger we can show up and the stronger we actually can claim more parts of ourselves. Does that make sense?
it's huge there's so much wisdom in what you just shared and
Yeah.
talked about with all of that. When I feel like we did the harmony, we did the beauty of relationships, and they
Mhm.
are absolutely linked. But now we're on to my other favorite conversation, which is about
Mhm.
attachment. And
Yeah.
love that because, yeah, to your point, it's a bit inevitable. Like if
Yeah, of course.
you're in an intimate relationship, you're going to be attached. And yet through spiritual teachings, attachment, to your point, leads to suffering. But there's going to be some level of attachment there, at least to an extent.
Yeah, of course.
And then for me, my personal life experience here, I guess my only input on that would be choosing the appropriate attachments. So where I find myself subconsciously attached, and this can be a person, but it can
Okay.
honestly be like anything. Looking at your phone all the time is like, oh my gosh, why am I perpetually looking at my phone? This do not need to check again, right? What's happened? Nothing's happened. Um, but it's a pattern, it's a subconscious program, like you were saying, that my mind is running. And similarly, we can run those programs with people that we meet. And so I found, yeah, we don't want to be afraid of the broken heart because that prevents us from experiencing life
Mhm.
and goodness and learning and growing and reclaiming and everything you said. But at the same token, we don't want to attach carelessly. We don't want to attach to people that cannot even provide us maybe what the relationship that we are looking for. And I know that's been kind of a journey for me where I'm subconsciously running programs of attachment that outrun and outpace the actual relationship. And that's where it's like learning about me and how I've come to operate and clearing up those ways that I become overly attached or like dependent um, to a negative degree, not the normal, okay, we're in a long-term intimate relationship, you're my husband or wife, like
Right,
that's
right.
different type of attachment. But the ones that are really with, I would say, like inappropriate objects.
Totally.
Be attached. Choose. First of all, just choose point blank because a lot of it's happening just really under the radar. And then when you are in the choice, choose wisely. Apply discernment. Take time to
Mhm.
evaluate, to see how people show up. I'm kind of speaking a bit more romantically here, but it's all types of people and relationships. People are going to show you how they operate. And if we are getting overly attached too early on, most of the time that ends in disappointment from expectations not being met because you just created a whole fictional story about how the
Right.
relationship should go and became attached to that, not even to
Mhm.
something that was like really there.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I do think this topic is related to what we talked about in the beginning, because in the ability to be able to look at the sides of you that do like provoke pain in relationships, like it's also still a study of who you are, and it's also still a study of having mastery over your thoughts and your emotions. And so if I can go deep into grief, and I can go deep into my broken heart and really feel those emotions and really like love myself in those spaces, is something that is very uncomfortable for people. But I think there's some real like depth that you can reclaim within yourself when you go into those spaces. And like you can show up in a different way, because you can say, I've been, through hell and back, and I can show up for you more strongly because of that. And it does require you to have some courage, of course. Courage is, about like going within the heart and really like feeling and really connecting with those pieces. But then it's like once you come out of that experience and you come out of like with wisdom through an experience of diving into love and coming out with pain and like loving yourself in that process. Like I think what it does is it tempers people to show up more strongly. And so like one of the things I was also reflecting on is like when you walk into a room with people, you usually can subconsciously sense from people in the room like who has done the most work on themselves, because they show up differently. The way like their energy shows up in a different way than somebody who hasn't really done a lot of introspective work on themselves. And so I think that there is some wisdom in, especially like when we're thinking about topics like manifestation or leadership or wanting to like create goodness in your life. There's some wisdom in like going into the depth and like really connecting with those deep parts of yourself, and still like maintaining an open heart in relationships, and not using that as an excuse, as a cop out to like stop creating more relationships and connecting more with people. Like that's also, I think, part of the harmony, is being able to like swim through the ocean of all of the different levels of relationships that exist.
Yeah, couldn't say it better myself. I think there's nothing. Okay, we're here on this planet Earth.
Mhm.
We got 100 years, maybe.
Maybe.
What do you want it to all be about? And if you spend 100 years avoiding the depths of your own feeling,
Mhm.
oh, there's another movie on Netflix I want to watch. Oh, I'll just go to the bar again with my friends. Oh, I'll go. I mean, none of that's wrong in of itself, but to do that at the expense of meeting your own soul,
Mhm.
I mean, you choose. You choose.
Right.
It's easy. It's easy on the one hand for me to say, and it's not, because I also understand being terrified of your deep feelings and feeling like if I feel,
So terrifying. Yeah.
am I ever going to come out of the ocean, or like we're going to be down there forever? So I guess, and there is also something to be said for finding the way out, so you know how to get out of the ocean, right?
Yeah,
Because
of course.
you're like, you know,
Yeah. But
uh,
I find people who have been through difficult situations and have experienced heartbreak, for me, I find those people to be so much more interesting. Like they've lived so much more life. And like I think that there is a beauty to that. And that does there's like there is maybe it's, and if we bring it back to art, like it creates more of that contrast and that depth.
yeah,
And and it creates more of like a beautiful garden of colors and contrasts and yeah.
that's one of the first principles in any painting, because you can have a black and white painting,
Mm.
need color, right? And actually, back in the day, they didn't have many different types of pigment. So the number one way that art was generated was through what you're talking about, which is value, change in value scale. So black and white contrast. And it's the same thing with film, right? All of it started with black and white. Color is something that we have developed as we had greater mastery over those pigments and, all the different ways, technology and things like that. But still to this day, if the value is off on a painting, it's going to look off.
Mm-hmm.
The colors can be off and it can look right if you do it the right way.
Right.
The value is off, we're not going to know that that's a mug sitting on a table. So the black and white scale, which is what you're talking about here, kind of like going into the depths, not being afraid to go into the depths of the darkness, not being afraid to go to the expanse of the light. I had a
Yeah, it's both ways.
total fear of that. My God, you're going to get obliterated. Am I even going to still be a person? I'm probably not, you know,
I'm gonna have to let go of all this darkness. Oh my God, that's so uncomfortable.
which is my comfort zone. And I
Yeah,
know
I'm so used to the dark. This is
I
hard.
identify with the dark, whatever. My all live really nicely and juicily down there, but in the light, you kind of just got to walk with a
Yeah.
clean and be free, and each day is a new thing. So, but yeah, so that's another interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. Add more white. I'm gonna get rid of some color even. Oh my gosh. Like
Well,
all these colors that I've attached to my whole life, I'm gonna have to let them go.
maybe not. We still like color,
Yeah.
but yeah, just use it judiciously. One more painting story, and then we can wrap up here. But I was taking a painting class. This was a while ago. I love color personally, and
Mm.
my teacher was like, Julie, are you using the color that the painting needs, or are you using the color that's convenient because you happen to have it on your palette?
Oh, that's good.
And I was like, oh, snap.
Oh, snap.
Because how true of that is how we live
Yeah.
out, right? Like, are we
Mhm.
really going out to create the exact right thing for whatever it is that we're manifesting? Or are we just, okay, I'll make do because this one's nearby?
Yeah, I've got extra orange, so I'm just gonna use orange because I have it.
Yeah. Or even if we want to apply this now to relationships, it's like, this person's kind of fine. Like, they sort of,
Oh, totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
versus, no, this is really what my life will be fulfilled with. This is the energy, the signature, these are the qualities. This is what I'm gonna create. Or I'll kind of like slap this one on and it'll be fine for whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that that can work up until a point, but if you go deeper into knowing yourself, it works less and less.
Totally. Or like you might see a painting that you're like, oh, I've always liked this painting. My whole life, I've always liked this painting. And then you go to a new gallery and you see something different. You're like, oh, huh, that's actually really interesting. I've never seen a painting like that before. Wow, maybe I should check that painting out. This is really interesting. It's like there's so many art analogies. It's so good.
There
But
are,
it's a good though. I think like the underlying theme here is like, just like with art and painting and color, like there's so many different ways to approach it, just like in relationships and like in all of the combinations of creating something, like you are creating art and you are creating beauty on some level. And so like the more that we can approach our challenges in relationships like an exercise of like creating more harmony and beauty in our lives, like I think the more joy that we're gonna find in like meeting different types of people while also like really loving and respecting yourself and who you are and how you show up. It's just like creating the tapestry of like the masterpiece of life, Julie.
I love it. Making good
Good.
beauty. And then also,
Mhm.
what is the tapestry of your life? How do you want that to look like? Who is
Yeah.
being woven in, and how much, emphasis are they given, or space versus anything else? 'Cause that's all part of it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good.
Very cool. Well, beauty, love, goodness, harmony.
Yeah,
attachments, triggers, I'm here for it.
me too. This was fun. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah.
Any final words of wisdom or ways that you want to call out to anybody who's listening if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, I don't know about final words of wisdom, but yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely my domain, and in my work as a business coach and even like I guess a life coach in some ways, like these are some of the things that, some of the topics that we can come into, and we're talking about your the landscape of your business, and what's like in, the intricacies of like what's showing up for you and in like your challenges in business. These are some of the conversations that I have with clients. And so, yeah, if anybody's interested in reaching out to me, they can find me. It's just my name, JustineHarrington.com. And it
Awesome.
has all of the different services that I have.
Great. And we'll have that below for folks too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so thank you so much, Justine, for joining. It was lovely to have you.
Thank you so much, Julie.
All right. Thanks for everybody for listening.
Bye.